And now lastly, we'll move on to not V consonants. I'm only going to do a couple of them, and I'm going to focus on the more difficult or challenging not V consonants. The first one we're going to do is the infamous glottal stop, and this is easier to pronounce than you would think. First of all, it exists already in English. If you say uh-oh, you already utter two of them, one before and one right after the first If you pay attention, you'll feel a slight clicking deep down in your throat. That's the sound you're looking for. Uh-oh. Basically what you do is hold your breath for a fraction of a second before uttering the vowel sounds. You do this using your glottis, which is essentially your throat. One common mistake is that people think of it as some weird accent, that it isn't really part of the word. Keep in mind that the apostrophe is a proper sound, just like N, and you have to pronounce it. While learning a word like not V, don't think of it as a 4-letter sequence with an apostrophe in the middle. It's a 5-letter word. Another problematic situation is the word final or word initial position of the glottal stop. Most people can fake a glottal stop by pausing for a short while in the middle of a word, but you can't do that if it's the word boundary. Listen to how you pronounce uh-oh again, and you'll notice that the first vowel has a little throat puff as the pressure built up under the closed glottis is released into the next sound. So we can see that uh-oh has both a word initial glottal stop and a glottal stop in the middle. An example of not V words with word initial and word final glottal stops can be found in the word evang and at the end of the word prte. The next consonants we're going to cover are the not V ejectives. These are pronounced k, p, t, and they're represented by kx, px, and tx respectively. The ejectives are also much simpler to make than it first seems. Here's a good beginner's place to start. Hold your breath, then produce the K, P, and T sounds. However, don't say K, P, and T because it isn't going to work with the vowels in there. Pretend that you're trying to utter capita without any vowels and without exhaling. If you do it right, you'll hear 3 clicking sounds, almost like k-p-t. So far, so good. Now the real key here is that these sounds are not made with air from your lungs, but rather with air from your glottis, which is essentially your throat. To do this, you're going to want to essentially back up air in your throat by closing off your glottis. Once you've done that, essentially you make the K, P, or T sounds in your mouth and then release the air from your glottis. This should result in the not V ejectives. And they're not really clicks, they're more puffs of air, but they do sound somewhat like a click. So the K ejective is k, the P ejective is p, and the T ejective is p. Anyway, back to the beginner thing. If you have k, for capita, then so far so good. The next step then is getting the ejectives right in a word. And this can be very tricky, but the trick is that you should give them time to complete before letting any air out, or they'll turn into their standard pulmonic consonants. For example, when uttering the not V word atk, you should go like atk, and then pause, and then do the sound. The t and k can be changed as neither of them uses air, but if you rush that terminal it'll open up into the k sound and ruin it. So in conclusion, it's atk, and the not V ejectives are k, p, t. Next, we'll move on to the not V consonants P, T, and K. They're slightly different from the English versions because the not V consonants are always unaspirated. An aspirated letter is accompanied by a strong puff of air that you make when pronouncing those letters. In English, the letters P, T, and K are sometimes aspirated and sometimes not. In not V, they're always unaspirated. To see the difference between an aspirated and unaspirated sound, hold your palm up to your mouth when you say words like tor and store. You should feel a strong puff of air when saying tor and not a puff of air when you say store. Also, you can see this in the words pin and spin, and in the words kill and skill. Now you'll notice that the not V, P, T, and K almost sound a little bit like B, D, and G. However, they are very different from those sounds. Similar, but definitely different. Examples of the not V, P, T, and K can be found in words like fbom, taranu, and micune. The next consonant we're going to do is R. This is an alveolar flapped R, and if you speak a North American dialect or Scottish or Irish English, then you should be able to do this no problem. The alveolar flapped R we've more or less covered earlier with the rolled R, and it's where you touch the tip of your tongue to the alveolar flap, the little ridge on the top of your mouth, when you say the R sound. So it'll be This is most obvious in words like irayo or nari. Nari. The next not V consonant we have is TS. This is probably one of the easier not V sounds, and this is similar to the end of the English word cats. Or it's similar to the beginning of the word tsunami. Ts. Ts. And the final consonant we have is NG. This is pronounced like the end of the word singer in English. Ng. The confusing part is that we don't have this sound at the start of a word, and not V does. So for words like nga, it's pronounced just like that. Nga. Ng. Ng. And this concludes our pronunciation guide. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or on the forum. And let me finally say, irayo masmukan sismuke, ke evame ote ewa ngahu, ivang not vi.